resolution, but it's already past the 3 days. This is the 4th, January 4th, and but still, if you don't have any idea about how you're gonna have this year, and then just take a time, maybe sitting on the desk and just scribble and look back the last year, and then how are you gonna live this year. Just maybe gives you idea about how you're gonna live, and then maybe you could make your life move into this year. That's my hope, and then I hope that you guys have many blessings on to you guys this year, and maybe your wishes comes true, and then you can move on to the next level of your life. Today we're gonna talk about communication in organization, especially in school setting. We already assumed that we need to understand the school as an organization. That's why we can borrow a lot of ideas from the psychology, from the organization, but still apply to the specific different setting like a school, right? And if you Google in what's the communication theories, and there's a lot of theories, but this one is I'm introducing the theory of the communication, and then a little bit kind of developed a long time ago, not recent one, but still that the basic and kind of based on the academics, and then gives you some idea. So I don't know how many of you guys have taken a class related to communication. When I came over here, I took the kind of speech class, and I learned in junior college, and I learned the basic what is the communication, what is the senders and message, and then receivers, and there is channels, and you can use a lot of different channels, and then mean that different methods of communications, and then you can get a feedback and all kind of structure. So maybe I can introduce you later, but that's the first time that I exposed the study about communication. It's about 20, when I came to the United States, and then when I was taking the junior classes in junior college. So almost I came over here at the age of 30s to think about how old, and that's my first experience. And then when I studied psychology, when I studied leadership, and then there's a lot of things that we have to talk, and we gotta think about what is communication. So today we're gonna learn about how important is communication skill, and especially at school as a leader. So if you are thinking about school administrator and leaders, principals and vice principals, and then think about how they communicate with others, and then how can communicate purpose of education and your finance, and then all different stuff. Not just to the with the children. Sometimes you gotta talk to children, the student. You gotta talk to the staff, and you gotta talk to teachers, and you gotta talk to what, and also the superintendent, the district, and you gotta talk to outside of the school, like a parent and communities, right? That's why communication skills is really important. Let's start with introducing as a basic theories, communication theories. And first of all is structuralistic and functionalistic theories, and then basically there's impulse here and what outcome is coming out. It is simple. So it really they emphasize the series of communication exchange what occurs and functions what unintended consequence of action at least as often as about purposeful outcome. When you communicate with each other, but still you can say something and senders communication and receivers and what receiving the message between the message and they communicate here what eventually get the what purposeful outcome, right? And that's kind of what they really emphasize. So it shared belief in the independent and the object realities really emphasize what shared belief. So another thing is the insistence on the separation symbolic and language from the object and thought being symbolized in communication. So they want to separate symbolism and what the language from the what basic thought and thought and the object in communication. So they are a little bit different. It means that communication is really specific. In certain form is there and what is gonna function in organizations and try to communicate with the others. So usually communication theories are like 30s, 70s, and then 60s, and in each that is a style, communication styles, and then another word is kind of a top-down. If you go to top-down communication style, if you go to a firm, and then what? Even though nowadays they try to communicate in different way, but still there is a hierarchies, right? There is a hierarchy, and all the time there's a chain of command to communicate. So if you go jump up and then go to present, you gotta go, okay, manager and another level and go up to like this. That's usually follow the chain of command, right? In communication. But that's a top-down, it's really formal communication, okay? So written communication and oral communication organized well and not that many information and clear, present the message and clearly. That is and so that communication style and also it's not that much quantities and rates and volumes and the complexity of messaging. Because think about it's not an informal kind of communication, and then you got to structure very well, and you got to deliver the message clearly. So maybe if there's any room of misunderstanding of message, and then the message will not be twisted and tilted at the end. So that was they try to minimize the subjective distortions. If you even though senders message to the receivers, and then there's always think about the receiver. He has his own lens and understanding, his own worldview, and then sometimes they understand in their way. And even though sometimes it's not twisted completely, but little, but same meaning, but think about next and next all the way to bottom, and then sometimes the communication is twisted, distorted. But structural and functional theory kind of try to minimize all this distortion, and then there's objectivities there, and thought is clear to deliver the message. So that's usually, if you go to organization like 60s, and still, if you go to firm and then companies, you can see the kind of top-down structures. And then maybe in America's economy, we cannot see the power status, and then not that much clear, but there is. But if you go to another country like collective society in Korea and China, there's a really hierarchies there. And sometimes I know one of my friends who worked in Korean company because he came from Korea, and here he is a representative of the company in the States, and then there is a clear hierarchy, even though in America. So, okay, boss is driving this car, and then what? The below was the staff, and then what? And they cannot drive a better car than his boss, like that. It's not understandable for maybe you guys born here and raised here, but maybe if you're born in foreign countries and then come over here, and then when you grow up, and then still think about the culture, company culture, and then maybe it's a little bit different, right? So top down, based on this, So most public schools have their hierarchy in United, America is like the 70s and 80s, and still we don't say that there's no hierarchy at companies and firms and organizations, but still it's there, right? Because there is different jobs, different status is there in companies. There is a basic, one of the theory in communications, structuralist and functionalist theory. Each one have the function and they have their own agenda to deliver, and there's a basic, send a message and clearly to come out and deliver your message. And cognitive behavioral theory, a little bit different, and it's from the discipline of psychology, and almost the same as the functionalist and then structuralist theories, and then but there is a little bit distinctions. And cognitive, they have the same thing, basic, foundation different, same, but they said that cognitive behavioral theories claims that knowledge generated through the discovery of a psychological mechanism. Think about what kind of mechanism is there. There is, and for example, and there's a cognitive process, and there is what stimulate here in cognitive process in the middle in the box, and then what? The process box and the what? Response. Right? Outcome is not. This outcome is there. Stimulates what? And black box is an outcome is there. Response is not outcome, right? That is a basic idea. But what's a cognitive, in psychology, they put the cognitive process. It's not just, it's hard to explain. That is kind of blood process, kind of environment, reinforcement, and then punishment, and then depends on how you do it, and then outcome is different, like that. That's knowledge generated through the discovery of the psychological mechanism, right? And communication is a manifestation of individual behavior and thought process. That really focus on the individuals. And so, and they said and may the variable kind of impact on the cognitive function and its appearance in behavior, language behavior like this, and what? Outside personal controls. Outside personal controls. May, it means that some cognitive process is a really, you can process it, think, you can put it in a thinking process, but this outside personal control, it means that environment influence a lot on your communications, on your behavior, right? Communication behavior. That's why they say a lot of major variables is kind of environment. There are a lot of different variables, but they just think about, and then if you apply this theory in education, and there is a Hawthorne effect giving management attention to human relations factors as a favorable impact on the organizational process. If you give you more attention and what, the organization is really going well and tend to be successful. So, mean the human relations and think about human salaries and think about working environment, all kind of stuff, right? We already talked about that one. So that's a Hawthorne effect, and then if we take into the education field and then school setting, and then how can you give more attention to students? How can you give attention more staff and what? And teachers, and they can work better, and then at the end, what? Schools under your leadership and what? Under the administration leadership, and then achieve the purpose of education. That's to give us some idea about, right? And humans are really affected by environment. And outside is some factors, outside factors. So here is some think about the relate to the leadership style communication, and then Linkert and he think about a little bit reflecting the psychological and behavioral aspect, and then he divided four styles of the communication styles, and then first one is exploitive and authoritative style, and then benevolent, authoritative style, and then consultative style and participative style. So he drew the kind of the theory communication style based on the behavior and cognitive behaviorism, right? And then what's the exploitative, and there's a concern for people and trust factors and communication and teamwork, right? And then here is the communication style is what? So always communication is almost the downward process, a leader to subordinate. Okay, follow me, top-down style here. And what's a benevolent authoritarian style is a communication somehow upward but mainly downward. There is a consideration a little bit, but not all the time. Mainly top down, but it's less than the exploitative authoritative, but benevolent authoritative is a little bit considered the lower, right? bottom. And then what about another style is a consultative style is what? Communication is the vertical and what? No, vertical and horizontal. So top down, bottom down, and what? Okay, it's not a function. It's a job function. It's different, but we have the same power like this. That is a horizontal. So and consultative is also vertical and horizontal communication exists. Vertical is maybe top down, maybe bottom up, and whatever, and then what? Horizontal is kind of where we are equal power, or we have equal authority, and then they communicate as individuals. And so subordinate to leaders and leaders subordinate, and there's kind of a different communication. That's a consultative, and participative style is both vertical and horizontal communication exists, and same. What is the same? But what is the difference? What is the difference? Two styles is a trust factor. So trust factor is what? Leader has a substantial trust in his own subordinate, but confidence level are not that high. Okay, they trust the body as a subordinate, but okay, they're gonna do it. They have capability to do it, but their confidence level is not that high. But the participative is what? High believes in employees' competence and skills. They fully trust. That's the difference. Even though they use the same communication style, and then a participative and consultative and different communication style. Maybe there's a trust factor and another factor is here, and need more focus on people, but here there is a higher concern for people, not just more focus and higher concern about their subordinates. And the leaders is a they really focus on the relationship, not the work. Right? Little bit different. And so he suggested, Rickard suggested communication style in organizations, and then he analyzed there is 4 kind of communication style. Nowadays, there is still exploitative, authoritative communication style, but maybe this one is more, maybe we are dreaming about this one, but sometimes consultative is better. It's kind of getting down. We think that better communication style, but not all the time. When people are not responsible and accountable, and this one is really hazardous, right? And if you don't have a work ethic, and work is always dumped to others, and some people burn out and moving another company, and then think about work ethics and values. It's really important. That's a theories. Another communication style is interactional conventional theories, and then this is usually from these theories, sociology, and anthropology, and philosophy of language. What does it mean that their key concept is what? Really symbolic interactions. What is a symbolic interaction in communications? Maybe when you communicate and the tone is really symbolic, right? Your response is symbolic. Your eyes contact is symbolic. But there is a language, and then sometimes if you communicate with the language, and it's a little bit different meaning like that. So key concept is symbolic interaction between the sender receivers. So there is kind of a social relationship, being social relation exists views as a process of continuous interaction that establishes, maintains, and sometimes alters certain social conventions and certain language and symbols. That's why people we see it as a social animals, and then that's why social existence, continuous interactions, and sometimes what established, maintained, alters. So they say communication is a process of creating social reality, and what is the reality in relationship or living, and each corresponding culture, norms, and values. We there are cultures, norms, and values. That's why it's hard to communicate with others. People coming from a totally different background, and education background, and cultural background, and their personality difference, and then we gotta adjust, right? And that's why it's the process of the creating social reality. And so understanding what is going on, why we need to do, and what's the reality. So this style is think about in when you process of creating social reality and the corresponding culture, norms, and values, and then we only talk about the organization cultures, and organization culture is really important. Depends on the organization cultures. You've got to use the different style of communications, right? And this aspect, and then really remind us how important organization culture is, right? There is a interactional conventional theory. So really, how can we kind of interact with the symbols? It's really symbolic interaction is really important in communications. And maybe if you really want to become a kind of leaders, and I know we always emphasize communication skills, but still, maybe if you take some communication class, and maybe you can learn more kind of information, then what is successful, what is not, and then you can learn about, and then you can understand who you are, and then which communication style is the best for you, and then if you take this communication style and go to different organization, and then still organization culture is different, and then organization entity is different, and then you can see what communication style is better, and then maybe you can adjust, and then you can lead people. What about the interpretive and critical theory? This one is really really based on the critical mind and interpretive mind, and then this is kind of theories from the variety of investigative tradition and interpretive sociology and phenomenology and hermeneutics and understanding of phenomena and the human lyrics, human lyrics, and try to understand why the text, and then understand the situation in what Marxism and the Frankfurt School, and they really they came out of the box of understanding of the social also social social situation, right? And then they said that it's not adequate understanding usually social theories, and then suggested by the scholars, because think about the social structures. Do you know the Marxism is there? And who work really hard for and low classes, and who is a high class, and then as a bureaucratic, and then manipulate and kind of exploit the proletariat, right? This group, low class group, and then there's a companies there, and then so especially in the political and economic and also situation, and it's hard to understand the whole phenomena with the traditional social theories, and then they kind of developed the new theory, critical theory, and then how can we reduce the gap between who have a power, and who doesn't have a power, so try to make equals. Nowadays, one of the examples was kind of BLM, and then like a lot of social movement, and there's a critical research on that, and try to pick up one of the issues, and then based on the economies and the politics, and there's no equal distributions, like and race, and then gender, sex issues, and gender, race issues in the politics, and economic, institutes, right? And trying to solve a problem that's a critical theories. So here it is, and then the preeminence of the subjectivities and high value associated with the individual experience. And based on the what you experience. Situation is different, right? And interpretation is different, but they try to understand. So even though people have experienced the same things, maybe their understanding is different. Meaning is really important. It's really important in this communication style theories, and then so they really focus on the individual communication. So when you go to school, and how can we, there's your positions, and maybe you're an administrator, and I'm a principal. I can run this school in my leadership. That's true. But when you communicate with, maybe you can use a lot of different structures, like each representative is staff representative, student representative, and then maybe teachers representative. You have parent representative from the parent outside, and you can make a big meeting and then start to communicate. That's one way that you can do it, but still reflecting this theory and the individual communication is really important, and even though you are the leader, you must still go into you need to talk to horizontal communication, right? I know some people have different experience, but it's really you can see, maybe you can have different representative and talk about the individual. So we gotta know what is really effective communication. So especially interpretive and critical theories, and just think about if you become a private school like 2,000, secondary school is principal of 2,000 of students to school, and how can you communicate all the way to 2,100 students? But still, how can you, even though you're principal, but sometimes use the horizontal communication skills, and you can try to open the window of communication to students and staff, and then like informal communication, they come and then talk to you. That's the informal communications, and maybe teachers, and it's not among the students, among the teachers, among the staffers, and then they open the kind of window of communications in a different way. But it's a think about, and there's a lot of communications, written communication and oral communication, and maybe it's formal or it's informal. Even though same oral communication is formal or informal. And maybe verbal communication or non-verbal communication. Non-verbal communication is really important, right? And then we gotta know that when we communicate and how you understand which one is best, especially interpretive critical theories. And then just think about people who come from the low-income families, and it's really first gen of their college, college, and depends on different racial group, and then their socio-economic background is really different, and then how we can communicate with them, because a lot of kids they never exposed to a lot of different environment, educational environment, middle, maybe upper middle, and high classes, and their also standard of living is different, right? Standard of living is really different. And think about, I'm a typical middle class, and my kids went to college, and then private school, and that is why. Do you know how much they spend on the tennis? She was in tennis team, and so do you know how much they pay for each lesson? And professional come and teach them, and they pay for like $300, $400 for each lesson. But my daughter said she started a lesson with $35 with a coach, and like around my community, and then he never raised the kind of fee, because you start in $35 and you can because he's really my daughter is one of the good student in his in one of the good student, so maybe anyway, so he keep $35 per lesson, but she said I made, and she said, and she paid $350 per lesson. So wow, I mean the lifestyle is different. Think about who has more, and they most exposed to different environment and different opportunity when they grow, right? They go to private school, and then from the kindergarten to high school and college. When they come into college, they totally different. It means that they said that when they come into college, and if they train in private school and really prestigious something private school and then they already finished the second year of college. Because if you graduate from the public school, like, no. When they look back, when my daughter looked back to their high school teaching, and they said they didn't learn anything. I mean, the quality of education is different, right? So it's a totally different world. So that is how can that's why it's really important. And maybe if you go to my school area, district, and then they are really Asians that dominate community, and they are really invest a lot of resources on children's education, but not it's compared with like a mid-high and high-class education. It's nothing. It's nothing compared with them. But still, in the middle class, they invest a lot of resources on children's education. But still, what about if you go to other inner city and it's a very poor area and a rural area? They don't have an opportunity. That's why, and do you know the Khan Academy? So even though they don't go to have any other resources, and then they maybe the public kind of education help to the student, and they made a website and a lot of topics, and they simply and recorded and then lectures, and then recorded lectures, and then if you don't know about the concept, and then you can turn on and then you can understand. There's a couple of and try to help the people have equal opportunity, but not equal opportunity. My kids sometimes they don't know they don't have a clear understanding of what they learned, and my wife found the website and then recommended them to listen, and they listen. Sometimes it's helpful, right? Like this. That is such a really important part of your education. And if you become an administrator at schools, and there's a different group of, so their socioeconomic status is really different. Especially if you go to some, like my district too, the district that I have lived. Let's think about basic communication skills, and then how can we apply to the school environment. And what's the difference from then this communication style from the figure? Different from organization, and there's a basic academic disciplines and theories, and how can organization communication different from these academic theories, and then Egerelson and the Steiners, and then present kind of this is the organizational communication. You gotta remember when you communicate in organizations, it's not just academic. And then there is formality. It's really organization is a formality communication. So there is goal and regulation and policy and procedures, theories. That's organization. It's a different. Just think if you work at the company, what's the goal? And there is a norms that what you should do and not should do, right? Shouldn't do, right? And specific policies there. That's we gotta need to know. What about another characteristic in organization communication, hierarchical manner, always. Depends, we already learned the different communication style, and then, but there's a hierarchy, whether maybe president, vice president, manager, different level of managers and workers, right? Depends, it doesn't matter how you communicate with, it's a vertical or horizontal, but still, there is, we gotta know the hierarchy manners. And another is the development of close relationship with another members, limited scope of informal organization communications. So, how can we develop the right interrelationship with others? Think about organizations big and small organizations like 10 people and 20 people, 50 people is okay. But what if 1,000 and what if 1,000, hundreds organizations? That's why the development is developing this close relationship with all others is limited the scope of informal organization communication. How can you learn organization? Think about, and if you go to like elementary school, is like in my district, and each class is around 30 and 3 classes. So how many students? Maybe 100, around each 100, in each class is 100, each year is 100 and 600. Right? When they go to college or high school, and then jump up to 2,500. So what about when they go to college? 30,000, depends on school. My older one has a whole student is 6,000 people, and my younger one goes to school is around 1,600 students. Depends on the school. So we gotta know the current limitations. And what else? Existence beyond the time frame of given members of life. So academics, basic trends, and we're gonna talk about organizations, what existence beyond the time frame of given members of life. Maybe if they like work and they are satisfied with their work, and then satisfied with the salaries and working environment, and they stay longer. But if they don't like it, but they're not gonna stay long, how can you develop that kind of a relationship? That's the organization characteristic in communication. So we gotta remember, right? And then if you think that the school consider school as an organization, and then think about this, all these characteristics as schools. But another thing is that we gotta know that, and that's why if you think then organizational leadership is really important, especially leaders are really important. And maybe I talk to you about the leaders and managers, how is it different, right? Last time I already introduced how is it different. Leaders and managers, how they different. And but there is some areas kind of an overlap like this. Accomplish a goal and explain visions and organizations kind of figureheads and motivate others and mobilize resources. There's a leaders have to do, leaders have to do, and managers have to do. But leaders, always visionary, and then strategically approach and creating the values. But one thing is managers, they follow the procedure, policy and procedure. Not to create new things, and they try to keep it up with boundaries. Different. Yeah, so there's things about how important in the leadership in organization and communication, and then here is and at school and superintendent and the principals spend 70% or more than of their time communications. Maybe superintendent is kind of a district. If you go to district, and then there's a superintendent, right? And then principals, more than 70% they spend time on communication. And another in organizations, the researchers survey that chief executive officer in a corporation spend 78% of their time in oral communication. Oral communication, it's a lot. And then with the time, with the lower level managers spending more than 80% of their time in the hierarchy, but still, and they gotta communicate more than 80% with their low level managers. It's a lot. So communication is really important. So usually, and as the ability to communicate is a critical factor in manages promotabilities. And sometimes, I know that's good things, but sometimes they don't work, but they are really good at communication. And they got promoted and then promoted. But that is another side of the communication. They're not confident on their work. They don't do work. They don't have work ethics, but they communicate very well. They know how to communicate and please the receivers, and got the credit, regardless of how they work. And then organization suffers. We gotta know that one. And we already taught a consultative communication styles and participative communication styles. But you couldn't use any kind of style, but you gotta know who the workers, co-workers, who work with you, right? So leaders should know that their co-workers, who they are, and then the leader should know that what their capability, abilities, skills. That is important things. And so communications is really important to say, contributing to the organization's success, right? As an administrator, leader, like a principal, vice principal, as a superintendent, or whatever, and then communication is really important. And especially must need to be fully aware of the intricacies of the school you need or this district. So you gotta know the school, not just knowing as a student and staff and then as a teachers, right? We gotta know what is inside and outside. Because outside the school is the district is connected to the outside, it's a higher. And what about outside? And then communities there and parents there. It's different. Just think about intricacy. How we're going to understand school cultures, right? There is a dynamics is there, and then here is, and then so communication channels on both formal and informal. So we're gonna should know that what kind of channels we're gonna open. But if you are really authoritative and then maybe you could open more open to the what formal communications. But if you more like not authoritative, but still you are really have a leadership and different and aspect values and then ethics, and then maybe you could open your not the traditional values and mean that, and then you could open the informal communication mean that this one. So channels both are the needed, and then so communication in term, especially in organization leadership, is very important. It's really important. We got a lot of the factors affecting organizational communication. What kind of factors contribute to effective communication, and what kind of factors make barriers in communication. Basically, here's a diagram to how we communicate. And here is the senders, and senders here initiate, like me, I try to send a message to you guys. You guys are receivers. What is the message? Message is like the content of the lectures. We are talking about communications. And then here is a receiver. But receiver, originally you guys are receiver, and but still give me a feedback, right? Oh, you like this, we're gonna do work on this one, and we need more information about this one, and then that's the information enough, and then like this, and then feedback is coming at the same time. You got a sender, and then coming to, and then you are receiver. Okay, and then how can I prepare the next lectures? And then might be another class when I teach this class again, right? That's a feedback, and the communication is there. Channel is here. How can you communicate? Usually, this communication is one way. There is no top down and vertical and horizontal, right? It's not vertical horizontal. It's a one way. It's not two-way communication, because just record. If you don't give me any response, any feedback, it's one way. But if you are sitting in the classroom, in-person class, and maybe you can if you have a question, and you may question me and try to answer you guys, and then there's communications. It's a both way. So we gotta know that this sender and at the same time and receiver by the feedback, and then there is a lot of experience, field experience. Receiver and same, but you can see that there is a lot of distraction. Sometimes language, and sometimes context, and then sometimes content, and here is same, sender and receiver is the same. And that is we gotta know that we which channel we can use, right? And then formal or informal, vertical or and horizontal. Anyway, the message is delivered, the feedback is coming and feedback is coming. And then we can know how much we deliver the message that I really wanna deliver to the senders. Think about what factors influence on this communication style. Your message is supposed to be clear, right? Clarity should be clear. Clarity is there, and what credibility is there. Sometimes we don't know the source of the message, and it's gonna be gossiping around and around, hurt a lot of people, give them misinformation. As a sender, how can you get the credibility? As a sender, how can you make a clear message? How can you make your message clear? How can the receiver trust your message? Credibility. And directionality is different. What's horizontal is effective, or the vertical is effective. Top down is effective, or bottom to top is effective. And there's directionality. And there is, for the clarity, and there is a barriers. It's one of the most kind of barrier in communication, in the nonverbal communication. Nonverbal means that sometimes your expressions, your tones, voice tones and pitches, your gestures, your background, all the things that you use. And then, so nonverbal barriers is here in difference in perception. When you communicate in classroom, and then what? You're listening very well, but it seems like your attention is not on the lecture, right? Your expression is different. That's a kind of miscommunications. Like a lack of interest. Maybe you try to listen to, but your eye is coming up, but it seems like you are not interested. Try to play with your phone, try to play with your what? Computers, like, I'm not interested, but do you know why I'm sitting here? Maybe your real agenda is different, but lack of fundamental knowledge or specific cognitive base of understanding message, and that's a different though, how you respond with that one. That's number one. And then personal characteristic, personality and emotion and prejudice, and then that's maybe, and people have it non-verbal. Verbal is clearly shows what you're saying. And then what is the reaction to the appearance of the communicator? How can you react? And then distraction or actually, interference or poor listening and competition for attention. That is all distraction. And that if there is kind of a distraction is there to think about senders and then receivers. Messages going in, how would they understand? If you have some prejudice, right? If you have some prejudice on me and on if I have prejudice and you, and then it's hard to communicate. Always sometimes think about some agenda on the top of the message. There's a number of barriers. What about verbal barriers then? Verbal barriers is a language which you may result in semantic problems, the structures and written use different, and then meanings different, right? What about sometimes inadequate vocabulary, meaning is the same, but what context, the vocabulary is kind of used in different context. It's not a thematic meaning is the same, but in context is different. That is a bubble barrier. So that is really clear, right? But this is not clear. But still, impact on communication. So always, so there is it's a really challenge to clarity, right? And what about another thing? So clarity means that cultural difference. I'm from Korea and there's some people grew up here and living there. Last Sunday, I went to church and then my family is a different culture standard because we are Korean Americans and we need basic courtesy on worship. And that's the first year, January 1st, and we went to the church and worshiped him wearing the pajamas. And I know they usually celebrate like this, and the New Year and the Pajama Day, and then they celebrate. But do you know my culture, in Korean culture, in 31st, we try to leave behind the old years and expecting new things, and then try to start fresh, right? It's different. And so while we have worship and kind of our face is like not happy, what is this? And really informal and wearing the pajamas, and then I don't know, things like it just got out of the bed, and then it's kind of uncomfortable. Cultural difference. But I know that's not my culture, but try to respect other cultures. Regardless of the essence of what we're doing, but try to respect their cultures. Another, the clarity, when you make the message clear, and then another personal, individual personalities, and I want to talk about their personality, and it's very important. Some people try to talk, it's already a little bit upbeat. Some people say calm down, it's really make boring. Some people really a little bit exaggerate. Depends on your personality. Maybe kind of distract your message, or clarity of message. What about the credibility? How can you make it probabilities? That's a really big thing. And maybe formal communication is so always a clear message that you deliver. And then that's why when you communicate basic information, it's always formal communication is really important. So when you find some resources through Googling and we gotta know that who posted this information. It's original information, it's from the government or from the other people, and who just heard from the information is the credibility is lower, like this. So try to get original message. That's formal communication is really, just think about it, conform with always part is you gotta do the formal education, maybe written letters and oral, but still well organized, and maybe eventually delivered to and written form. That's why when you communicate, and then you gotta really, if you deliver the information carefully, always there's a written, there's evidence, right? Informal is to engage and you can listen to others and then kind of grapevine like this is goes and kind of make it close with others and then we can communicate quickly and spread quickly and but it's easy but sometimes think about information is goes and all the way and go and filtrate it in the what? The intentional messages complete, it's not delivered completely. Here is the 80% of original message has been filtered out. 80%. So that's why informal communication is we gotta listen, it's easy to communicate, but still we gotta really know. So directionality is really important when you communicate. I already told the vertical and horizontal, top down, bottom top, and sometime and horizontal like top down is always there is a hierarchy is there, and then horizontal is between individuals at the same authority level, right? Level in hierarchy. Function is different, job function is different, but in the kind of a manner, and they communicate and over the communication, and then over from the bottom to top depends on how much, but degree of the trust, how much the leaders trust the lower level stakeholders, right? And how much they trust, and maybe it's effective. Communication is effective. That is kind of directionality is important, and they may be influence on your communication and credibility, important, and clarity of the message is very important. There is I bring the kind of what kind of communication style, and this one is about centralized communication style, and then was a decentralized communication style, and then think about centralized communication style is the leaders in the top, and always you gotta do everything, right? It's hard. That is usually top down. And not top down, and usually and people communicate that way, but organization is like a top down, it's a little bit different, and then but decentralized is like informal, like a communication. That is maybe communication, informal communication, and then you gotta there is centralized and then maybe top down, and then always there, and you can talk to different part of leaders or managers, and they communicate, and they kind of hierarchical follow that way, but different is decentralized, and then maybe people have informal, and people have a little bit same authority in the level, work, and then they communicate each other, and then here is a characteristic of decentralized and centralized, and then centralized is like this, pure upper management members have a decision-making power. They communicate, and then authority is given to those who are at the top of the chain of command, right? Authorities, the top of already, right, the low levels, the stakeholders never talk to the kind of leaders like this. More standardization and then more control and then less expensive and then what? Limited creativity because it's a limited. People are just really limited. And then but decentralized is kind of your communication styles and the middle low level managers have the decision making power. And then leader, there is you can see how they communicate with others like vinyl, right? Grapevine, and then they spread. So these the middle, and then authority have given to those who are closer to stakeholders. And then you go to the bigger dot and smaller dot. And how they connected, and that's examples. And then organization are really compared with the more standardized and they were self-sufficient. And then faster decision making. Hey, maybe if you know the like, kind of, you can kind of collect all information and reflect the what they want, and then it's easy to communicate. And but top down is they don't know who they are and get the information maybe longer, and then the faster decision making more expensive. Of course, you gotta go all the way down and support everything, and then more creativity. So this one is like a formal companies, and usually they use it. Nowadays, they have a different department and they try to get opinions and feedbacks and they try to put together, and then they have a system, and then they do, but if you don't have a system, it's hard, right? And this one is if you have decentralized and companies too big, and then I don't know how can you do that, right? But small setting, maybe school, maybe it depends on the school culture, and then more effective, and then depends on. So another kind of aspect of the factors kind of influence on the communication. So we already clarity, and then what is the barriers, and then credibility, and then maybe personality, and informal and informal, and what about directionality, and all kind of stuff. And then other than that, the availability of the opportunity to interact, how much people can interact with each other, and that one is kind of influence. And then if we don't have interaction, and then you don't know who they are, and then like a whole impact, and then how they form the relationship, and it's not easy, and then what degree of the coherence of the group, how much have share the values and ethics and goals, and people like really proud of my work and really satisfied, but complained and not follow the regulation, and then like this, and then that is really affect the degree of the communications. So how can you create the kind of organization culture, like the degree of the coherence, put together the group? They are different, but try to, for the goals and for the purpose, and then values, and then how can you work together, and coherence. What about the status of individuals and groups? What kind of status they have in the communications, right? That is a fact. And just think about command of the chains, and then status, and as a low level stakeholders and then co-workers, and what about this kind of group and different level of communications. I already told you two directional communication flows, and not one way. It's not the top down communication, but sometimes we gotta maybe top down and bottom top, and it takes long. That's why the formal education is kind of communication maybe takes long, and understand and try to draw the behavior, but think about informal communication. Formal communication is maybe letters, but sometimes not everybody doesn't read the letters. It's really, as long as it's really, really important. Even though the always letters kind of go down or everybody, and sometimes they don't know, right? That's why they need education. So two directional communications flows is really important. When I talk to and there is a response, and whether it's kind of clarified the message. And here is some other books, the principle of the organization communication. And we already talked about senders and message and receivers. There's a messages sending and receiving skills. There is a skill. How can you present your message? Senders. How can shows your receiving skills, the message receiving skills, right? It's not just even though the message is already presented very well, but you don't kind of know, there's no skills to get it, and then it's hard, like a study. People spend a lot of time on the study, but they don't know how to study, it's not effective. Yeah, there's a skills we need, how to present, how to receive. And then clear, straight answer, not and informations and talk. If you don't know, and say no. And if you cannot say, don't make any improvisational answers. So amount of redundancy and feedback and amount of face-to-face communication. So redundancy means that kind of repeat, and sometimes people forget once. That's why repeating and rehearsal is really important. And feedback, kind of send your feedback. You understand it, you don't understand it. If you have a question, it's not clear and clarified. And relationship is really important. Face to face, and nowadays maybe I don't know. And we nowadays, and because after pandemic, still going on, and they open a lot of Zoom meetings, and also use the virtual meetings, and then. Sometimes it's not easy for me. It's not comfortable to know them and to understand them. Because if you see the Zooms, and then it's not easy to see the kind of non-verbal communication though. For me, it's non-verbal communication is really important. So I gotta see their emotions, I gotta see their face expression and eyes and everything. Now we missed it. Sometimes it's hard to see. But nowadays, and it's okay, but they said that, okay, you can work permanent at home, but nowadays companies kind of holding the workers back to the workplace. So I don't know how long they're gonna allow. And some of them, like, you gotta go to 3 days and go to office, and then they work there and they have a meeting there. So my daughter is kind of working usually at home, but it's a lot of meetings. Sometimes they have in the company, in the company, they call in and they got a meeting, but usually they have a lot of Zoom meetings. And my daughter has a lot of Zoom meetings, sometimes 5 minutes a day. Now, I don't know how effective. Maybe they can save a lot of time and other expenses, but still think about and which one is effective. And yes, and personal skills, presenting skills, and organization skills, and organizing skills, and planning, all things, right? And then you're gonna practice and practice to present. And sometimes you gotta know what is important information, sometimes it's not important, it's not important message. And then sometimes what's the important message is kind of distracting by the unimportant messages. And I kind of listen, and sometimes think about if you go to church and then some announcements all the time same, and then but depends on the who come out and announce and try to make a personal story related and talk, and then it's not effective, right? Just same thing, but different way, but sometimes time goes and on and too long. Just think about it, depends on. So we gotta know that what is not important and what is important. That's the skills. What about the administrators in communication? There's a lot of roles. If you are principal at school, and then how can you communicate? What's your role in communication? Sometimes you gotta send your message, and speech is kind of one of them in front of a student, and you gotta lead the meetings, and then you gotta monitor what's going on, and then you gotta see what's going on, and right? And that is their kind of roles. And sometimes, you gotta administrators, you gotta communicate with the parents, the children, staff, and teachers, and then districts, and there's a communicator. And what about? And diverse communication window, like there's a district meeting, and parent meeting, and student meetings, and teachers meeting, right? And they have to be a speaker, they have to recipient and listen to others, and that's a recipient, right? Receiver. And sender, then was a monitor and seekers. Think about there's a lot of different roles as a leader. And how can you communicate with the others as with your roles? That is really important, things to think. And so, if you are thinking about becoming a school administrator, and then thinking about thinking about becoming a school administrator, what there was the roles, and then how you can do. What about the part of the roles of the communicator? And communication is a very important thing. So if we don't have communication skills, and it's hard to work with the people, right? Especially deal with a lot of message, and then it's hard. So that is a kind of shows that how much roles you have to do, but still communication, we already learned that. Richard said that more than, almost 8 years, more than 7% they spend on communication, right? They time, 80% of the time, and on communication. So today we talk about the basic theory and how different is the theory as a different from organizational communication, and then we saw the school as organization, and then we reflect how can we apply the communication theory to school setting. It's not in-depth, but still giving you basic understanding of how communication is involved in education, not just teaching, but behind as an administrator, like principals and vice principals and district board members, and then we gotta know that how much is important communication is, right? That is the kind of part. So last time we talked about the cultures, and then this time when we talk about the communication, and the next time how can we manage the power and conflict like this. That's another area that you gotta do that, right? And maybe there's a lot of things, but we're gonna go over the basic stuff, and then if you read the books, and then we have two textbooks. One book is really focused on the principle oriented, and they try to give you a lot of example, but it's based on the really research. Another book is that I give you two books, and then another book is really practical. And half of the book is based on the case studies, and then trying to show the really detailed issues, and what's issues that the school administrator faces, right? And all right, so I hope that this is giving you some idea how important communication is in leading school, right? And I hope that you guys have a great start of the new year, and then continue and continue.